Welcome back to the Leeds Lens for a bit of your relegation battle roundup, talking about where we are at this moment in time. Obviously, we know Leeds United got a massive win Friday night against Nottingham Forest, what implications that had. Obviously, we know that Burnley didn't help us at all by getting beat by West Ham yesterday. And obviously today, a lot of people have been talking about the idea that maybe Crystal Palace could get involved in the race. Well, unfortunately, Crystal Palace today beat Brighton at Brighton, which means they now move to 32 points. And with Wolves and Burnley in their next two games, or Burnley and then Wolves in the next two games, at home, you would expect that potentially pulls them out of the relegation battle. But I want to talk about Brighton as well, and I want to talk sort of about a bit about Spurs, where they're at as well. Because in terms of a form table, actually, these teams are really, really low down the form table. Brighton have won one of the last 12. Obviously, terrible defeat today and terrible performance. I watched the whole game. So I wanted to talk all about them as well and just get into sort of the whole picture of the relegation battle and then sort of get to the end of it and come to the conclusion of where we're at with this relegation battle. Who's actually in it? Who isn't in it? Because I feel like at the moment, there's a bit of a situation where we're flip-flopping at times and we're going, they're in it, they're not in it, they're in it. And it's week by week. And I get that because obviously it's reactive to results and stuff on the pitch. But we weren't talking about Spurs last week in truth. We definitely weren't talking about Brighton last week. So them two teams actually in it, or is it down to just the usual three of us, West Ham and, of course, Nottingham Forest? Obviously, if you are new to the channel or you've watched the channel before, if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massive up the channel. Of course, views are slightly down because there isn't the transfer window to talk about. So if you could help me out on a Sunday, which has been a fundamentally a good weekend for Leeds United, that would be massively, massively helpful. So like, if you could, like, subscribe. Because I'm a smaller channel, essentially, the help that you guys can give me by dropping a like and subscribe, it massively pushes it in the algorithm and allows other people who like this sort of content as well to watch it. So if you could do that, that would be fantastic. But let's start with the Crystal Palace game. So obviously Crystal Palace beat Brighton today 1-0, and which was a really, really bad Brighton performance in my opinion. I don't know if you guys watched it, but I felt they were really awful in the game. I didn't think they had any idea how to attack at all. I think with Brighton, I don't want to talk about it too much, but because I want to talk about the implications, but it looks to me a bit like they're so built on this structure of Hurtzler. There's no individuality. I don't see them doing anything different. I don't see them taking risks on the ball. And I think that's been a key problem of Brighton. I thought you saw that again today. But I actually thought you saw in the reverse side, Crystal Palace, yes, weren't full of confidence, weren't looking fantastic in the attack. But the defensive unit of Crystal Palace today, I thought, was managed perfectly. And I think we've looked at Leeds United before in a few away games. I'm talking Everton away, Sunderland away, games like this. And I don't think we've managed the games unbelievably well. But actually, I think you saw a bit of a master stroke from sort of Oliver Glasner today and Crystal Palace on how to manage a game out. I thought they did it superbly well. And actually, Brighton they had a chance with Costello, but they never really had an opportunity in the game. And I think, look, that is a credit to Crystal Palace. And I think fundamentally that I do actually think that will probably see Crystal Palace home now. And the reason I say that is obviously their next two games, as people are probably aware of, they have got Burnley at home and Wolves at home. Two games I expect them to win. Obviously, they beat them two, which we would expect. Then naturally they'll be on 38 points. And that kind of means then, for me, at 38 points, still with would it be with 11 games left, you'd expect they get a few points in the last 11 at least to stay and keep their safety in the Premier League. So I think that's kind of, I think they're kind of out of it. However, when we look at Brighton, I think it's a bit more interesting. They've obviously won one of their last 12 games, Brighton, and they've actually got a pretty awful run coming up. I didn't see many people talk about them, but they've actually got Villa away next, which I think is a tricky one for them naturally. They've got Brentford away, then they've got Forest at home, which they probably expect them to win. But then they've got Arsenal at home, Sunderland away, and Liverpool at home. So a pretty tasty sort of next 6 games for Brighton. Now, naturally, of course, Brighton seem to do well against the bigger teams. They haven't lost to City all so far this season. They've always had quite a good record against Arsenal as well. And I think one of Hurtzler's sort of main accolades of being the right manager actually has been getting results against some of the bigger teams. So we'll have to see how they get on. But I don't think they're fully in it with Brighton in truth. And I don't think they're going to go down Brighton. But I think they're a team at this moment in time that you just got to keep an eye on. I think if they say they didn't win any of them next 6, then let's really have a conversation about it for sure. Stephen says, definitely Forest and West Ham. Depends on who goes the bad run. As it is nerves. I feel Sunderland take their foot off the brake as they are safe. Yes, I don't think Sunderland will go down, but I do can see a downturn in their results for sure. Philip says, all right, mate, Brighton had some really, really good chances to win that. Did you think, Philip? I didn't think that at all, mate. They had the Costulas one, and they had he had a bit of a chance in the first half, but I don't think Brighton created loads of chances at all, actually. I actually thought they were absolutely awful, Brighton, if I'm being honest. Philip says, oh, get a point. Yeah, maybe, mate. I didn't see that. To be honest, the game probably should have finished 0-0 in truth. I don't think Crystal Palace probably deserved a goal with their play, but obviously they did create that great one-on-one chance that obviously Sarr put in the back of the net, and sort of fair play to them. But I thought there was definitely... I think they obviously play a 5-back system. We know Leeds United play a 5-back system. And I just felt the way that they managed the game out in that particular thing. I think if you're Leeds United, you can take some inspiration from that and look at how they managed to do that and manage the game. Because I thought they managed it probably better than we've seen Leeds do at times. And I just thought there was a bit of maybe learning there. But obviously part of it is who you're playing against. And Brighton are not in a good phase at this moment. And that's obviously the sort of situation. So, if we take sort of Brighton and sort of Crystal Palace out of this conversation at this moment in time, then where does that leave us elsewhere? So then you've probably got Tottenham, you've got Tottenham maybe involved, Burnley and Wolves are gone, and then that obviously leaves Leeds United, West Ham, and Nottingham Forest. And I think as I said, when we're discussing this, for me, I think Tottenham going down still. I know they've got bad fixtures. I know Romero got sent off. I think that's a fair comment for a lot of people. I still don't really feel that they're going down. I don't think they will. I think they will get the stuff together. I think it will get to a point at some point if it's poor, where if it's going in a bad way that they will just sack Thomas Frank, and I think you probably will see a manager bounce there, and you probably will see them pick up results. So I'm kind of thinking in my head with it, really. I don't think Brighton are yet in it, but they're one to keep an eye on. I think Tottenham are probably going to be too good to go down, although you maybe say that about other teams. Maybe you could have said it about West Ham and Forest. But I think that's my feeling. I think Tottenham are too good, so I don't think they'll go down. I think Brighton just have the few more points, them 2 more points, is I think going to pay dividends. And then I think that kind of leaves you with Leeds, West Ham, and Nottingham Forest. Because I think Burnley, if there's anything you've obviously found out this weekend, I do think we found out that Burnley are down now. And I think we thought this for a while, truthfully. They haven't won for months. But but losing to West Ham, obviously, in a game that if they were going to stay up, they would have had to win. I think obviously removes them from the conversation. And obviously Wolves have been down for weeks. So then, as I said, it leaves you the big three, and which is on the thumbnail of the video today. And that is where I'm at with it all at this moment. Looks like we dodged a bullet with Strand Larson. He looked poor, says Jack. I thought he looked all right, mate, actually. I thought he looked all right. Philip says, shots on target, Brighton 2, Palace 3, not much difference. That's what I mean, mate. If they only had 2 shots on target, I don't think they had loads of chance then, but maybe you're saying that the shots were off target. But I did watch the whole game, and I didn't see that personally. Mark says, loads of twists and turns, 3 wins and 2 draws should be enough. A fighting point against Chelsea will do. Yeah, no, I agree. The thing is with this sort of, and we'll get onto this now, I think, so it's an interesting point. I think we're going to have to suffer a bit in these next few weeks. But we've always maintained on this channel, and I think I want to get this abundantly clear. I will not be going really emotional if results don't go our way in the next few games. I won't be, because this is not a 3-game block. It is in terms of, I'm looking at these next 3 games as if we can get through these, let's see where we are. But we all know in the last 10, we've got the best fixtures basically in the division. I don't actually think anyone's got better fixtures than we have. We know we've talked about enough, but we've got obviously Brentford at home, Brighton at home, Wolves at home, Burnley at home, and of course Sunderland at home in our last few games. And actually, even the away games, outside of maybe Man United, you look at all the rest of them and you think you can probably get points in them. I think the Spurs away, Palace away, Bournemouth away, West Ham away. I think they're the other 4. So all them, I think Leeds United can get points in. But I think the last of our run is obviously these next 3. So I'm looking at this moment thinking, all right, how much damage are these other teams going to do to this 6-point gap that we've got, or 3 points to Forest, obviously 6 points to West Ham, before them last 10? And that's kind of where I'm at, because I do think we can get points, and I don't actually think we're going to lose the next 3, personally. I think we will probably get some, but I'm looking at the other fixtures, and I'm going, right, West Ham are 6 behind. So they've got Man United at home, Bournemouth at home, and Liverpool away, their next 3. I know Liverpool have been on a bit of a bad run. I think Liverpool will win that game. So then you're talking they've got 2 games. Now, if they win both, then they're obviously, if we lose all our games, they'll be level on points. But are they going to beat Man United? And this is where I think this week is a massively, these sort of midweek games are going to be really, really important. Because if West Ham don't beat Man United at home, I don't think they beat Liverpool. And then of course, I don't they could easily still beat Bournemouth. But say they draw against Man United, beat Bournemouth, and then lose to Liverpool, which I think is maybe plausible, something like that. Then of course they come out of it and they've got 4 points. And even if then Leeds United have got no points in the next 3, which again is plausible, we'd still be 2 points ahead of them. And then you look at Nottingham Forest, because obviously they're 3 points behind us at this moment. They've got Wolves at home. I think we all probably expect they'll beat Wolves at home. They might not, but I think we all expect they probably will. And then they've got Liverpool. I'm not sure. They've got Liverpool at home, which I think Liverpool away, Liverpool on the road, maybe not quite as good. So they could get points in that. And then they've got Brighton away, and that'll be interesting to sort of see the scales with Brighton. If maybe Brighton lose that, it might be a different complexion. But again, I don't see them picking up 3 wins in that run personally. So if we can just get to this sort of these last 10, and even if the gap is about 2 points, and I know the worry is that obviously if it gets to 2 points or even level, people are going to start really panicking the fan base, and I get that, and it will depend on how they set the performances and what Leeds United have done as well a bit. But if we can just get to these last 10 out of it, it's completely in our hands then, and we should stay in the Premier League. And I've thought that for the longest period. And also, West Ham have been they've gone on good runs before early in the season. Don't think they've quite gone on a run like this, but they've gone on good runs, and then it's obviously fallen away. So let's see how West Ham react when they don't win in 2 games. Because we know full well for West Ham to catch Leeds United, because of this 6-point gap, they're going to have to put some serious runs together. I know they're on a decent run at this moment, but they're going to have to put another serious run together, because they haven't made up that. I mean, they made up 2 points in the last 4 games when they've won 3 games. And they're not going to do that forever, of course. So they're going to have to put up some serious points and serious runs. So when the pressure builds on them and they don't get the results they want in 2 games in a row, which will happen, let's see how they react then. And that's where I'm at a bit with it, because I know West Ham are flying at this moment, and I watched them the other day, and I must admit I thought they were really good. And I thought the worrying thing about West Ham, arguably, is that I thought they were really good at Chelsea as well. I know it collapsed in the last sort of half an hour, but actually for 60 minutes they were outstanding, as good as I've seen any teams really at the bottom in the last few weeks. And one thing that I will say about this West Ham team is I don't think that's Pablo's a great striker. I think Castellanos is decent, but what he's definitely given them, and I've said this before, is it's freed some of them on the left-hand side. He looks a different player completely. And it's freed Jared Bowen on the right-hand side, and it's sort of actually freed up Mateus Fernandes in the middle as well. And them players are playing really well at this moment. And I can't get away from that. And this is the best West Ham have played, and as I said, if they beat Man United, it could start to get really ropey. But we're just gonna have to wait and see. But I think overall, because of these 6 points, you've got to remember they're there. The 6 points are there, and Man City have just had a fantastic result today against Liverpool away from home, where Haaland scored right at the end. But we still all think Arsenal are probably going to win the league, don't we? Because the 6-point gap's there. And I think we've got to look at that in the same complexion with at the bottom of the league as well. And I do think these 6 points are more than people think. So, as I said, I'm just sort of ready for what's going to happen, I think, in the next 3. But I think as a fan base, we have got a bit of a responsibility when we go into that Man City game, or even when we go into the Sunderland game afterwards, if the results haven't gone well in the next 3, to keep behind the team, because that's the way we're going to stay in this Premier League. And we just got to accept that sometimes that's how the cookie's going to crumble with fixtures. Like, ideally, really, we don't really want a 3-game run with these sort of games in it. I think ideally you'd put maybe these like really tricky games that we've got in the next 3 over into the next 13, but spaced out rather than all in one go. But at least when we get over them, then they are done. And then I think, as I said, for the rest of the season, basically outside of maybe Man United away, which you still wonder because of the rivalry, we can get something there. That we'll have to see. But I don't know. I think that's the kind of the case with it. And Mark's right in terms of the twist and turn. Gipton White says, evening all, late to the show, look up, not down. And I think that's a fair point, because we're talking about West Ham constantly, and I've brought up 100 times. And I still do believe if a team's going to be relegated, if it's not going to be us, it probably will be West Ham, just because of the points. I don't think they're playing worse than Forest, but just on the points basis. Because as I said, I do think the 6 points is massive. But in the same breath, if you look up 6 points, we're nearly in the top half. Like, that's how ridiculous it is. So we can keep the momentum going and keep playing well. We can drag more and more teams into it, and we can maybe look at like a Brighton and see if we can sort of drag a team like that into it as well. Mark says, massive difference between Burnley and Man U. Manx will dispatch West Ham. I hope you're right, mate. We all know on this channel we hate Man United winning. Of course we do. But if there's ever a time that I want Man United to win, maybe it's that one. So Bruno Fernandes, we might have to call a favour in, pal. That's all I'm saying. One thing I do want to mention though, and I've thought this since the sort of Friday night game, having watched now all the relegation teams, is that obviously we know, as I said, Wolves and Burnley, that this is not in the conversation point that I'm making. I think Forest at this moment are playing the worst football of all of us. I think we're playing really well. And I think you see that actually in the results. We've still only lost 2 of our last 12. We've only lost 1 in about 3 months at home. And that was against the best team in the division. I think we've lost 1 in 7 at home as well. But I think if you watch Forest, for me, they're the worst team of all of us. Like West Ham are very good in transition. They're very quick. They've got pace in behind of Somerville and Bowen, and they're causing huge problems. I think Fernandes is playing really well in the midfield. I watched Nottingham Forest, and I think the way Dyche is coaching them, I don't think he's got a plan in the attacking phases of the game, and I think that's obviously what's causing them a few issues at this moment in time. And I think they've got a lot of quality, and I think he's probably, in terms of a squad basis that they've got, he's probably underachieving more than any other manager potentially in the whole league. I think they're doing that bad in terms of where that squad's at, and that's kind of why I've always had this regimented feeling that they won't drop. But in the same respect to that, if you actually just watch performance levels and you take out the individual quality, and this is a team game, as we always talk about, and not an individual sport, they do look the worst team for me at the moment. They do look the worst team. Now, obviously, they probably are going to beat Wolves the next game, and they'll probably level on points. It's obviously we don't beat Chelsea. But I must admit, I'm looking back to that game when West Ham played against Nottingham Forest now. And at the time, I was maybe thinking just sink West Ham completely and sort of get a Forest win. I'm now looking back at that game and thinking, I'm not sure on that. Maybe a draw might have been better for us in that game because Forest do look crap. And that's kind of the situation, really. Brighton keeps selling their best players. It catches up with you. They're well and truly in the relegation fight. I do think so, Gipton White. And I think, again, when we talk about sort of Nottingham Forest and sort of their negatives in terms of their play at this moment in time, I think the same could be said, actually, about Brighton. Brighton were bad today, and they've as I said, they've only won 1 in 12, and they started the season really well. I think they were on something like, after 14 games, on something like 22 points. Like they flew out the traps and they were winning loads of games. But basically, they've won 12. So in the first 12, they won something like, I think about 6 or something, or 7 in the first 12, and in the second 12, they've now won 1. And obviously, that's the one you naturally look at more because that's the most recent 12 games. So I agree. The only thing I've got with Brighton is, for them to drag in it, you always want to be sort of near on points with them. And our next 3, obviously, if we're to lose all 3, we kind of need Brighton to lose all 3 in order to drag them back into it. So that's the only thing I kind of think with Brighton, that they might just be a couple points too far ahead of us to drag them into it, especially based on the fixtures. Like if we had, say, I don't know, Burnley at home next week and we could win that, and then they've got, who've they got next? Let me have a look. I said it now. And then they've got Villa away next week. So you think, well, if they lose that and we win that, then we can go above them. But because of our next 3, it kind of makes that a bit more tricky, really. Ollie says, evening. Not too disheartened with the Palace result. They're still in it, and it also drags Brighton into the mix, who were very poor. Hurstler, terrible manager, most overrated manager in the league. I don't think that Brighton squad is littered with quality. And I think a lot of their best players, I'm looking at sort of Carlos Baleba, etc., are not playing that well at this moment, and I think that's not helping them. And I think, obviously, Baleba really hasn't played that well since the summer transfer window. I think part of it's obviously this Man United thing that's sort of wrecked him a bit. But I agree with you. They're not playing well at all. And Hurstler, I think, goes on these runs where he's absolutely garbage for a bit, and then it seems to just sort of have a turn of events. And I think if you're the Brighton board, that's probably what you're looking at. But if their results don't turn and they continue to be bad for the next, as I said, they've got these 6 games that we talked about. They've got Aston Villa away, they've got Brentford away, 2 really tricky places to go. Then they've got to have a huge game against Nottingham Forest, because then after that they've got Arsenal, Sunderland away, who have not lost a game at home all season, and Liverpool. So if they don't win that Forest game, there's a chance that they don't win any of the next 6. And then they've got to be really in it, then, aren't they? They've got to be really in it. But that's what we've got to do. We've always said this. We've just got to try and drag more and more teams into it, because at the moment I've got on the thumbnail a 3-way race. And that's where it's at, really, at the moment. And I still think that's the case. But if we can just get a few more points, we can push it up a bit. Don James says Rutter was awful today. He was. I still think that the way that the Brighton team are coached doesn't allow for players like Rutter, who are complete mavericks, to feature well. Like, it's so system-based at Brighton that when the system doesn't work and when it's failing, it looks really bad. And then I think when the system's playing really well, and like the start season, it looks really, really good. Gavin says, Rutter going down back to Leeds in the summer. I hope so, mate. I'd love Rutter. I really would. And I actually think playing off the striker, in that free role that Aronson plays, he'd just be electric in this team. I really do think that. It's a shame we played Brighton, who didn't need to get out of second gear when we were in our worst spell of the season. All of their goals versus back in November were practically identical. Yeah, you are right. And I think, obviously, that's the situation. I think that's something we've got to get confidence with, though, Ollie, as well, in terms of to get to 40 now, because of the result we had on... obviously, on Friday night, we need 11 points from 13 games. And if you look at the start of the season, in our first 11 games, when we were playing a 4 at the back, it was a disaster, truthfully. It all looked wrong. We were losing games left, right and centre. We still managed to get 11 points in 13 games. And by the way, if you look at our first 11 games, or our first 13 games when we did get 11 points, they're far harder than the games that we've got in our last 13. Especially when you take out these last few, so that's got to give you confidence, hasn't it? I mean, we've arguably got in our last 5 home games, probably 5 of the best home games you could have this season. Truthfully, we've got Brentford, who are always really good at home and not usually that great away. Obviously, a huge win at the weekend, and they have picked up away from home, to be fair to them. But we know Brighton are on an awful run at this moment. You'd have to say that's a really good home game to have. Wolves and Burnley are the best 2 home games. I don't think anyone's denying that. And in terms of the table, Sunderland's away form is absolutely horrendous. So, yeah, I think we've got to take positives from that. And as I said, it's going to get tight because we're not going to pick... Truthfully, we're not going to pick probably as many points up in the next 3 as West Ham are. Mike says Rutter will go up the gears when we play against them again. Hopefully not, because that's the second last game of the season, mate. So, hopefully not. I also want to say as well, the Man City result today, look, this is probably micro looking at, but that's what we do on the channel. But I don't think the Man City result today has done Leeds United any favours. We play Man City in a few games' time, and Bernardo Silva, if anyone listened after the game, said if they lost today, which I think everyone felt anyway, it wasn't just a Bernardo Silva thing, but he said if they lost today, they felt the league was over. They completely felt the league was over. So, had the league then been over for them, they would probably have then focused on the Champions League and focused on maybe trying to win the FL Cup, maybe win the FA Cup, and the priority would have gone maybe away from the league. Even if Pep Guardiola was playing his best team, in terms of a player mentality basis, they're not as locked in trying to win the Premier League because they think it's over. We play them in 3 weeks' time now, but because they won today, they're now going to be up for it. And especially if they win the next 2, they would bang up for it against Leeds, which had they lost today, wouldn't have been the case. So I don't think that Haaland goal at the end has done us any favours at all, I must admit. I think it's just made that Man City game much, much harder in terms of the Man City's mentality of going into that game. So ideally for us, really, in the next few, Man City ideally need to start dropping some serious points. And then hopefully when they play us, it's already over. That would be ideal. Gavin says, will West Ham beat Man United? Look, Man United are on a great run at this moment. I'm worried they're going to get slightly complacent in the West Ham game because we know that Man United team has got substance to do that. That's a Man United team that every time you seem to give them any sort of plaudits, they fall off a cliff. And I think a lot of their players, for me, when you give them a little biscuit, they'll run a mile with it. And I think and that's, or you give them a yard, they'll run a mile. And I think that's kind of the situation. So my only worry is they're going to be a bit complacent on Man United going into that, thinking they're going to roll Man United over or roll West Ham over 3 and 4-0, which I don't think will happen because I think West Ham will bang up for it naturally. So look, we'll have to see. But as I said, for me, especially this week, that Man United West Ham game is massive for us because if West Ham don't win that, we're going to be pretty much clear unless they go and win at Anfield, which I don't think they will do. We're going to be definitely clear going into that game, going into the last 10 games. And if we're clear of the relegation zone going into the last 10 games, we should stay in the Premier League just because our fixtures are so much better than everybody else's, truthfully. Anyway, thanks all for watching as always. I am going to wrap up the show there. I hope you've all enjoyed it. But I will see you tomorrow as we talk all about the sort of Chelsea preview. We'll look into all that. And obviously, if there are any sort of big breaking stories, we will talk all about them as well. So it'll be a bit of a news/preview show tomorrow. But truth for that is your relegation battle covered. And as I said, I hope you've enjoyed it. And as I said, if you have just joined, we have talked about Leeds United now for bang on 24 minutes. So you're more than welcome to skip back and watch obviously the rest of the show. Other than that, though, I shall see you all later, everybody. And hopefully see you tomorrow. And as I said, if you could drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff naturally does help the channel. See you later, everybody.